I'm not arguing. Thank you. We were talking.
I know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully.
Oh, we did.
Adults.
Okay.
So
And it's their hair.
No.
No.
Yeah.
They were companies. Yeah, I know. She's, you know, the thing is. They were brought on. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that was a. So. Call the meeting to order, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to public comment. Just for the benefit of everyone who is here, you are more than welcome to speak at public comment. There'll be a public comment now and at the end. This is also scheduled for a public hearing, which is about a specific subject, which is short-term rentals. During public comment, you are more than welcome to speak about that or any other subject you would like to. We ask that you please provide your name, address, limit your comments to 3 minutes or less until everyone has an opportunity to speak. Once everyone has an opportunity to speak, if anyone would like to speak for a second time with the same 3-minute limitation, you are more than welcome to do that as well. Would anyone like to speak during public comment? Okay, we'll move on. Next.
me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak?
Yes, I do.
Go right ahead.
Is this related to short-term rental? Or no?
This is, I just explained, this is public comment. You can speak about anything you want for 3 minutes. And then we'll, but this is not the public hearing. Don't want to speak.
We'll
No.
speak at the public hearing.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to public hearing, which is on local law number 2, 2022. That's a moratorium on short-term rental. At this point, I do want to, before we open the public hearing, I do want to mention a couple of things to people. First of all, moratorium is a temporary pause for a certain length of time. In this instance, would allow legal short-term rentals to continue to operate. However, any short-term rentals without a proper permit or authorization requirements would not be permitted to operate. So if you're illegal today, even if a moratorium takes place tonight, you're still illegal tomorrow. If you're legal today and a moratorium takes place tonight, you are legal tomorrow. Just want to make sure that everyone understands that. The town board is having a public hearing on the moratorium because we feel it would be in the best interest to hear from the public about enacting a possible moratorium. What is a short-term rental? As per the law, it is regarding section 260.52 of town code, which is tourist homes, bed and breakfast establishments. Defining a dwelling as a portion of a dwelling rented for a period less than 31 days. Will current short-term rentals be impacted? Once again, if they're legal, no. If they're illegal, then they could be impacted. However, I will tell you that our code enforcement officer generally reacts to complaints. You can fill in the blank there for yourself. Does this impact the village of Honey Eye Falls? No. This is for the town of Mendon outside the village of Honey Eye Falls. And I would remind everyone that your address for your mailing is not indicative of where you live. Honey Eye Falls is where we are right now. This area that's surrounded by 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. If you get a village tax bill July 1st, you're in the village of Honey Eye Falls. If you are outside that area, even if your mailing address is Honey Eye Falls, you technically do not live in Honey Eye Falls, even though it's your mailing address. Can you submit public comment on this issue after tonight? Absolutely. The whole point of tonight's meeting is to take a timeout. If this was a sporting event, it would be like a timeout. We want to stop and figure out what we're going to do from here. And that's what the town board is saying. Can the town board do something different? Can it do this exact same thing that's in the law now? Absolutely. Anything and everything is open. And if there was a new law passed and the current law was changed, there would have to be a public hearing, much like this one tonight. And the reason why we're doing this is we've had several situations in town that have come to our concern regarding short-term rentals. And as I mentioned, you can voice your concern tonight or even after tonight, no matter if the moratorium is enacted or not. And at that point, it is 7:06, and I will open the public hearing. Once again, if you would please provide your name, address, limit your comments to 3 minutes or less until everyone has a chance to speak. And then we'll go around and give everybody as many 3 minutes as they need to convey their opinion. You certainly can get up and say, I agree with Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so if that's your intention. If you don't want to go into a long speech, so to speak. So at this point, we'll open the public hearing. Yes, sir.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Brennan from the law firm Davidson Fink. I'm here on behalf of
Sir, can you provide your address?
I live at 316 Westminster Road. I have
In
an
the
office
town of,
in the city of Rochester. I have an office at 400 Meridian Center Boulevard in the town of Brighton. I'm here on behalf of the property owner in town, a corporate entity called Flowers by Steve LLC. They own a property at 977 Mile Square Road in the town of Mendon. This is an existing Airbnb short-term rental. The Flowers by Steve purchased this property in December of 2021 for the specific and exclusive purpose of renting it out as a short-term rental, as an Airbnb. Prior to purchasing the property, they did their due diligence. They reviewed the town code. They researched the town's website. They spoke to their realtor, and they looked at the existing Airbnb listings that were in the town of Mendon at the time. And they determined, based on that there was nothing that prohibited short-term rentals in the town of Mendon. Since then, they've retained me, and I agree with that assessment. There's currently nothing in the town code that prohibits short-term rentals. In fact, because the town has proposed this moratorium, I think it's pretty clear that regulation of short-term rentals is probably necessary. And we certainly don't contend that this board doesn't have the authority or even good reason to regulate this type of use. But what we ask is that you acknowledge that prior to this moratorium, there was nothing in the town code that limited short-term rentals. In fact, there was nothing in the town code that limited or regulated the term of any rental, whether it be a year-long lease, a month-to-month lease, or a short-term lease, like the lease or a short-term rental, like the ones we see on Airbnb, VRBO, and the like. And so I think the fact that this is being proposed now is indicative of the fact that this was not prohibited before. And so we think it would be, frankly, very unfair to apply this retroactively to property owners that made an investment in this community based on the reasonable assumption that they would be able to operate this type of use. I'm here with Mr. Steve Goodemote, who is one of the principals of Flowers by Steve. And I don't want to go over my time, but he is going to talk to you a bit about his experience with purchasing this property and sort of what they've been through to get to this point. So I'll let Steve take it from here. And I thank you for your time.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm Steve Goodemote over at 977 Mile Square Road.
Can you
Like,
spell your last
sure, it's GOODEMOTE. In December of 2021, we closed on the property to put it up on Airbnb. And since then, we've poured our heart and soul into this thing and tried to get it up and running and, of the quality that we wanted at, and that people will come and, love it. And everybody we've shown has said it's beautiful. And I think we've done a great job. I don't know if anyone's, checked out the listing or anything, but, and on top of that, we put over $60,000 worth of improvements into it. We put in AC through the whole thing. State-of-the-art water filtration system, of which the old system is just not cutting it. We put a tankless water heater in. We replaced a wood-burning stove with a gas fireplace. We put in first floor laundry, a new dishwasher, outdoor security cameras, and just tons of minor cosmetic improvements. We also alerted our neighbors out of courtesy to let them know what we were doing and just kind of, just be a good neighbor. And so far we've rented it out 5 times, and the people who have rented it out, nobody's throwing parties. They've come for to attend a 90th birthday party of a relative. They've come for a funeral, and one of the guys had grown up in Mendon and was just coming to visit family. And we have a lot of things in place to prevent parties. You know, we screen our guests. They have to have a driver's license or ID on file with Airbnb. Airbnb also screens the guests. We have the security cameras at every door. You know, we don't want parties as much as you guys don't. We even have a 2-night minimum so that people can't just rent it for one night. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Someone else like to speak?
John,
Yes.
going further, I just want to make it known that my address is 987 Miles Square Road, and it abuts 977 Miles Square Road. Sake of disclosure, I just think to put out there, but I don't think there's anything that keeps me from making a level-headed decision on this subject.
Great, thank you. Sir?
Yes, my name is Tom Gift, G-I-F-T. I'm at 670 Chiefs Factory Road. Very brief, I would like to speak in favor of the moratorium. Of course, this is not forever. It's a moratorium, as is pointed out, and we'll give people time to look into the issues and resolve them in the best way possible. The second thought is that, as many people in the room know, there's been a lot of emphasis on the part of citizens on preserving the rural character of our community, and I think that is relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Wayne Prentice, 28, Type Small, Parkview Manor Circle. I want to just support what everyone here just said. Moratorium is a great idea. I think the whole overall flow and the mission you guys have is we live in Mendon for a reason, right? It's neighborhood, it's quiet, it's friendly, it's rural. It's like going back to years. That's why I'm here. And I'm sure many other people here for the same reason. I'm grateful that you guys are looking at this. I'm grateful that we want to take a pause and whatever it takes to maintain that, which is the reason which brought us here. I think most appreciated.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who'd like to speak?
Margaret Fiore, 383 Pine Road. How important is preserving farming and agricultural rural character to the town of Mendon? Town's proposed law placing a moratorium on short-term rentals talks about the residential character of the town, but seemingly ignores the agricultural character and roots of the town of Mendon. The overreaching moratorium proposed is a blanket moratorium excluding any private farm, not only from sourcing income from Airbnb and Verbo tourism revenue, but also halting the building permit, special use permit, as well as precluding any appeals to the zoning board in relationship to the moratorium. This action is in direct contradiction of the support of Airbnb tourism and tax revenue of Monroe County in the state of New York. I understand there is an apprehension as to the impact on public safety. Verbo and Airbnb regulate potential guests. Guests are thoroughly screened through social media, public records, and prior host reviews by both Airbnb, myself, and my staff. Given the prepayment nature of these tourist home rentals and the significant expense to guests with the rental of an entire home, not by person, most guests are conscientious during the stay in our community. Airbnb, as well as I, do not allow parties due to Airbnb general liability coverage provided by the host. Our guest acceptance policy goes further, excluding rentals from any prospective guests from the 585 area code. We assume these local guests are looking to host parties, creating liability for us and the community. Under long-term lease arrangements, these types of controls are difficult to govern over the longer duration of the lease. I think the one thing I found most upsetting at this moment is that the Town Code 260-52 special use permit for tourist homes was just recently amended to the town board this past December 2021. There was no moratorium at that time, and the town board was able to amend the code. Additionally, Monroe County's public support of Airbnb tourism revenue to the county goes back as far as 2018. Obviously, the county has studied the operations of Airbnb short-term rentals, addressing public safety, health, and community impact. Why is the town board looking to recreate the wheel, spending our tax dollars on studying a town special use permit code in operation that Monroe County has already studied and endorsed? We have recently paid for the town's comprehensive plan that was adopted February 8th, 2021.
Sorry, ma'am, your time is up. If you wouldn't mind, we'll let anyone else speak and then you can have another turn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Webb Pilcher. I live at 461 Pond Road. I appreciate the fact that you're considering this moratorium. I think now is a good time for us to stop and think about the impact of this kind of commercialization of residential properties. What would that impact be long term if this were not regulated in a thoughtful way? As somebody who's paid very high taxes on my property on Pond Road for 18 years, I'm happy to spend my tax dollars letting you have this moratorium and try to consider this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Paul Silvestri, and I live at 155 West Jefferson Road, and I'm an attorney representing Ms. Fiore, Harder Secretson Emery, our officer in former Bausch Montville Legacy Tower. Well, you already heard from Ms. Fiore. My comments extend more than 3 minutes. I'm not going to repeat what she said, but they were looking forward to using short-term rentals as a method of raising money to help with the significant restoration that they're doing on their 56-acre farm here in the town of Mendon, her primary residence. And as she pointed out, there's already regulations in place that address short-term rental. We do not understand because we're not aware of any significant facts that have arisen since October or December of last year when you last amended the short-term rental without a moratorium. Moratoriums are there's a lot of problems with moratoriums. But before I get into that, I ask under 239M of General Municipal Law, this should be referred to the county planning group. And I was wondering, we didn't see anything in the record that indicates that this proposed moratorium has been referred to county planning. Reason for it, why it should be referred to county planning, is because it is addressing your zoning code, and any matters, generally matters addressing zoning, should be referred to the county planning for recommendations. There are a number of issues with the moratorium text. Section 1 talks about this is going to be for a period of 6 months, while within another section of Section 6 of the moratorium says this is going to last for 1 year. So those corrections need to be addressed by the town board before passing any laws. It's 6 months or is it a year? Regardless of the intended duration, any length of the moratorium here is unreasonable. The US Supreme Court looks at the length and time of moratoriums with suspicion and skepticism. And when they look at whether or not the length of time is reasonable, the Supreme Court laid down some rules that talk about looking at the circumstances. Moratoriums that have been successfully defended for a year or 2 years have dealt with highly technical matters and also matters that were not already addressed in a zoning code. That is not what we have here. Highly technical matters deal with solar panels, they deal with wind turbines. This is simply short-term rental. And again, your code already addresses short-term rental. Your code can continue to address short-term rental while the town board does whatever additional analysis they feel necessary to make any additional changes they feel necessary to the code. Given that the town board did this just 8 months ago, we see no reason why a moratorium is necessary now. In addition, the moratorium has no hardship exception and any variance.
Excuse me, sir. Time is up, but I'd be more than happy to have you continue once everyone has a chance to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak this evening before we go through for a second round? Yes.
My name is Lillian Vandenberg. I live at 18 North Main Street, Rockport, New York. The reason I am here, I'm Mendon currently. I clean on Airbnb, and the reason I'm here is I'm letting everybody know that this ban on this does not just affect the owners of the Airbnbs. There are people like me who's a college student who already has a part-time job to support their education and get through school. And I just want to let everyone know that this is also income that other people rely on. And this is something, it's not just the owners of the Airbnb, there's a lot more that goes into it, and a lot of people that they support in the process. And yeah, everyone says 6 months isn't a long time, but 6 months is a long time to the people that are getting a lot less of their income than they would be cleaning these places. And one more thing I just want to say really quick is that everyone claims that they're here for the quiet atmosphere. My opinion, I personally don't think that people are coming to Mendon, or I know someone who has Airbnbs in Monday. People are not coming to these places to be rowdy and loud. They're coming here for peace and quiet and with their families. And that's my opinion on it. And I just want to let people know that other people are affected and their incomes matter too. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, Ms. Fiore, would you like to continue?
Certainly. Thank you. I just have 2 short paragraphs. Why is the town board looking to recreate the wheel, spending our tax dollars on studying a town special use code and operations that Monroe County has already studied and endorsed? We have recently paid for the town's comprehensive plan that was adopted February 8th, 2021. One of the initial goals and strategies was to promote agricultural production through use, right to farm, and economic development. And now the board is asking us to pay even more with the devaluation of our properties in the real estate market with a blanket moratorium precluding any upgrades in economic development on our properties last an additional year and beyond this period. Finally, I'd just like to mention on the Mendon Facebook community page, there has been over 30 comments today made on there. Most of them in favor, some not understanding really what's going on. But if you haven't done so, I ask you to take the time to read some of the comments. If you can, before making your decision, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you very much. And again, my name is Paul Silvestri, representing Ms. Fiore. I believe where I left off was discussing the fact that another issue with the moratorium is it has no provision for a hardship exemption or a variance to the moratorium, where somebody could come before the town board and argue certain hardships that they're incurring as a result of the moratorium and asking for a reasonable exception to it. Again, I think that's necessary to pass constitutional muster so that there is not an unconstitutional taking of property. In addition, I would like to raise the fact that, this town already has, again, a regulation in place for short-term rentals. The town and part of that regulation already delineated the areas where they deemed short-term rentals are found acceptable. And of course, where they concluded is the business district, the RA5 and the RS30 zoning districts. It would appear then that when the town first analyzed this law and the need for this law, they rightly concluded that such operations are best located in low density and commercial areas. And that's where the law stands today. In addition, they gave the town planning board the power to then review through the special permit process all the potential impacts that you could typically get from such short-term rentals. And here, so review of the refuse and service areas, general compatibility with adjacent properties and other properties in the zoning district, reviewing impacts as a result of off-street parking, noise, glare, and odors and other effects. So through the special use permit process, the planning board has that power through conditions to regulate the proper use of a short-term rental and to do so in the best way possible on a case-by-case basis based on the application and the particular neighborhood, the particular home, the particular operators that are involved for that particular location or property. And that's the best way to address the concerns that many of the citizens we have heard raise as a result of the short-term rental process. In addition, the Airbnb, as was mentioned briefly before, Airbnb has policies in place as well to protect against residents in town, for the residents and the town concerns about noise, parking, parties, etc. Airbnb has multiple policies in place that address the trash, the noise, unruly behavior. These policies include designated quiet hours, parking locations and hours, number of cars allowed, proper disposal of trash.
So I'm going to interrupt you just for 1 second. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? Otherwise, I'll just let this gentleman continue. You-
We also have somebody on Zoom. that
Okay,
wants-
all right, sir, if you don't mind pausing for a moment. Yes, sir.
Zoom first.
I'm sorry, sir.
You want to do Zoom first?
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Patrick Cunningham. I live at 18 Parkview Manor Circle. I was the first house built in our subdivision 35 years ago. I wouldn't have bought the house or the lot to build if I knew there was going to be a commercial operation just down the street. I happen to be the deputy mayor of Rochester, New York, but that has no influence on this discussion because I think we should have a moratorium so we can have more discussions about this situation. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Yes,
Dan Considine, 175 Pond Road. I'm your neighborhood firefighter. You guys might know me. I've been to some of your houses. What I'm seeing is we're bringing more patients in and less firefighters. And we need housing for firefighters. We need people that live in Mendon and volunteer the time. And I see a house that's got 40, 50, 100, I don't know how many patients I'm gonna go visit on Pond Road. So I'm looking out for us, our district and the firefighters, bottom line.
thank you. Oh, is there anyone else? Before we go back to you, sir, there's somebody online, right?
Hello, can you hear me?
Volume, we'll get the
Try it
volume.
now.
Try it now.
Andy. try it
Hello,
now.
can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely? Okay, sorry, I'm on my telephone. I'm basically in support of the town moratorium. I think that it's,
Andy, can you hold on just a second?
sure.
Trying to get your volume up a little bit.
All right. Can you hear me?
Not yet.
We're working on it.
All right.
Just give us a minute.
Okay, that's as loud as we can go.
That's as loud as we can go. So go ahead, try to speak up if possible.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. My name is Andy Conroy. I live at 603 West Bloomfield Road in the town of Mendon. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I live on West Bloomfield Road and I am in favor of the town's moratorium as the town considers, how to address short-term rentals in Mendon. I did, hear somebody earlier speak. They own a property on Miles Square Road that's being operated as a business. And I think that this requires, as was raised by another resident, more discussion among the town. I think that what you're doing is making sense. I share concerns of other residents about, vacation rentals, eroding the residential quality of our community. Certainly, whether an outright ban is decided upon by the town or not, I think that, taking some time to consider the impact of short-term rentals on our community is something that needs to be done by the town. I don't think that this, can you hear me?
Andy, can you hear me? We're not hearing you at all.
All right, sorry. Hello?
Don't tell them to log off and log back on again.
Yeah.
He must have heard you.
Is he off now?
He just got off.
All
When he comes back on, I'll let you know. Who is it? It's Andy Conlon. From. And
Sir, do you want to continue while we're waiting, getting these technical
Sure.
things straightened out?
Certainly, and
I don't want to waste anybody's time.
hopefully I end before you get to issues straightened out. As I was mentioning, Airbnb's policies include designated quiet hours, parking locations and hours, the number of cars allowed at the residence, proper disposal of trash and debris in designated areas, prohibition of gatherings of more than 16 people, prohibitions of disruptive parties or other behavior, littering, making excessive noise. All of those are already in place with Airbnb and the Verbo type policies that are out there. Airbnb removes listings for properties that don't abide by these policies, or their clients don't want to see these issues in the community because their clients don't want to see these issues in the communities. We note that the town code for tourist homes are limiting to renting 4 rooms. The code also requires all parking for tourist homes be outside of the highway or the street right-of-ways. Even if 4 families each with their own vehicle parked at a tourist home, it's unreasonable to argue that somehow more than 4 or 5 additional vehicles parked off street would somehow constitute traffic congestion. So again, we don't understand why 6 months, a year, and even with your code, possibly extensions that result into 2 years. So why so much time is necessary for analysis for the law that you already have in place. And if there is additional analysis to make some adjustments to that law, that analysis can go on while the special use permit process continues. So thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have an online? I'm hearing that other people online could hear him, but we couldn't.
yes, the other people online can hear him. He just came back in right now.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
While we're working on those issues, may I address another related question or issue?
Sure, go ahead.
So at the last special town board meeting, which was a week from tonight, Ms. Fiore was present and made some comments because it was under our understanding that was also going to be a public hearing addressing the moratorium. I wanted to be sure that her comments are in fact going to be considered part of the public record for this public hearing. And I also have her statement that she read that evening.
If you could send that to us, that would be great.
And I could actually hand it.
Our town attorney isn't here tonight, so I am, whether or not that, how that applies to it, I'm not, I don't feel comfortable answering, but if you could send it to us.
Well, I'll give you hard copies.
Sure.
There's 10 copies here first. And then I can also send it electronically if you need it. Yep.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
I think that might be all you hear.
All right.
Andy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. You can't hear me though.
No, we
Shucks.
can't hear you, but for some
Um,
reason everybody else can hear you. Yeah, we'll just have that.
Any ideas, Danny?
Volume's at 100%, it should be here nice and loud.
Nothing came unplugged, right? It still shows you, it's like 3 green and a white light. Have him, I gotta have him call and I can put that speaker.
Yeah, go speaker phone.
Andy, can you call John's cell phone, or I can give you a cell phone number and you can talk over speakerphone?
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello?
What's John's number?
You want to text 7810083. Okay, Andy, can you hear us? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's as loud as it goes.
Let me put it out in the middle of the room.
Yep.
Out there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, hello, everybody. My name is Andy Conway. I live at 603 West Field Road in the town of Mendon. And I just wanted to speak in support of the town considering a moratorium on short-term rental. Certainly, as a lifelong resident of the town, there's an overwhelming concern among neighbors that I've spoken with about these vacation rentals, in effect eroding the residential communities that we currently live in. There are a bunch of concerns that have been raised, but effectively, we heard from somebody earlier today, I think 977 Miles Square Road, as well as another property along Pond Road, which in effect are, being operated as businesses. And, I know this town has a commercial district, right? And really outside of that commercial district, we're talking residential or agriculturally zoned areas. And my concern is that, in operating these short-term rentals as businesses, in effect, they're skirting the town code, which, I know some people have raised concerns that it does not speak specifically to this particular use. But I think that's why it's important that the town take a moratorium to step back and think about, the impact of these short-term rentals on the community, because, the rise in Airbnb and Vrbo, this is a rather new phenomenon. And, I know an attorney, I believe, Mr. Silvestri mentioned that, they have policies. That's all well and good, but who enforces those policies? Ultimately, I think it falls on the localities, the towns, the villages, to effectively police and to make sure that these properties are being used as they're supposed to be used. And so I think it makes sense, to engage in a moratorium, step back, do some reflections to determine, moving forward, how the town wants to treat these short-term rentals, which are, a sort of a new development within, the rental community in the last 5 to 10 years. So I think it's prudent. I encourage the town to do so, and I'm happy to hear that you are, in effect, looking to vote on this moratorium for the next 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Y'all know this technology makes things.
I'm Mark Battle. I live at 14 Burlington Drive, which is localized, it's a little bit south of the proposal here. And I kind of support, and where I was going to go is exactly where Mr. Conroy was going. I don't think it's unreasonable to have a moratorium for sports, because I'm a big unintended consequences kind of guy. And I've been around the block a few times. I run my own business. I've been on boards. I know it's a position boards in. But I don't think it's unreasonable for the board to really step back and really evaluate the impact that this may have on the people who live on Pond Road, Miles Square Road, that whole area there. So again, I applaud her for, I'm a firm believer in the entrepreneurial spirit, but I think government and the entrepreneur have to work in harmony. And I think the government, local government, has to protect the people that live in those surrounding areas to make sure that their peaceful right to a quiet enjoyment of their property is not get compromised in any way, shape, or manner by this proposed ERBO. Like Mr. Conway says, they have rules and policies in place, but the town is the ultimate enforcer of those policies. Really, the ERBO is it's an internet-based thing, from what I understand. And yeah, they can get delisted and everything else. And the only other thing that concerns me, when I gather, I think there's been some violations of this operation. I think the person who run this business has been cited by the town in a couple of instances. And that is just something that bothers me a little bit because I think they have to work in harmony. I don't think you just have a right to feel entitled. You can do whatever you want and not abide by the laws of the community. They do have to be looked at. Gentleman representing her. But I think the town with this new concept of VRBO, what could that mean 5, 10 years down the road? I don't think a moratorium is unreasonable at all. But everybody to get a little bit more information, get their arms around what is going on here. And for the town to really make sure that they're representing the people so that things don't go. All right.
Thank you.
Alex,
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
my name is Ann Banford. I live at 41 Main Street in Livonia, New York. I just want to say a couple of things. When Margaret Fiore started her Airbnb, there were many other Airbnbs were both amended. There was never a problem until she purchased her place on Pond Road. First of all, I watched a lot of your YouTube videos on your town meetings, the last one that was August 11th. I listened to the people in Mendon speak. I heard one person say the car she had in her driveway, another person said her lights were on. Margaret Fiore's house, she has 56 acres. You can't see her driveway from the front of her house. You can't see anything from the back of her house. I listened to what they all said, and I know a lot of it's a lot of false information. It's not true. Okay. Do I really think traffic's increased since she's opened her place? I find that really hard. I go to Mendon Ponds all the time. I'm out here. I take pictures. I love Mendon. I grew up out not far from this area. I remember when the LPGA was in town, everybody could rent all their houses in Pittsburgh every year, right here in Oak Hill. But all of a sudden, so many people live on Pond Road are upset for some reason. I don't know why, because I just find it interesting. I just find it really, I don't know. And it's, most people that do use Airbnbs are it's a high-end place and it costs a lot of money. I use Airbnb all the time. And there's rules and regulations.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, sir.
Just like to clarify a couple of points, but I'll start by seconding pretty much everything that Mr. Silvestri said earlier. I think he's done his research here, and he brought up some really important points about the constitutional rights at issue, rights of due process and fundamental property rights. And I think it's very important that this board get this right, because if you don't, it's going to result in uncertainty. It's going to probably result in litigation, and that's not good either for my client or his client or for the town. And so the certainty that we want is just a specific exception to this rule. You know, my client's property is not a tourist home. There's nobody living there full time. It's not being rented out by the room. Only the entire property is rented out at one time to a single family or to a unit of people that are functioning as a single family. There's one kitchen, which is usually how a zoning code defines single family. We want to be considered a single family home. It should have been considered a single family home initially, and there should be an exception for an Airbnb that functions that way from this moratorium. And again, we don't contest or disagree with your ability to regulate Airbnbs. It's just that this moratorium cannot apply to a property that was legally allowed to exist. The portion of the proposed moratorium that I take issue with is section 6, where it says that the prohibition shall not apply to short-term rental occupancy uses that were lawfully established prior to the effective date. How do we prove that we lawfully established this use? There were no permits, there were no approvals required for this use when the property was purchased, because the code did not regulate the duration of a lease or a stay. All it regulates is the number of families that were allowed to live in the structure, which is 1. So as long as we comply with that, we comply with the code. And I just also want to address the issue of it being a business. I don't think that's a distinction that we should make. All rentals, whether they're year-long leases, long-term leases, month-to-month leases are inherently businesses. I own a single-family home that I rent out. It's all for profit. It's a business, but that's not something that the zoning code regulates. And then I'll just say that, I think Section 8, you have a penalty here of $2,000. I don't think that that's reasonable or fair. I believe the town code provides for a $350 code violation penalty per violation. I think your town code already has a provision that's similar to that, and to go to $2,000, I don't think is in line with any harm that's being caused to the community by a violation, a single violation of this moratorium. Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hey, what about those prompt for 3 minutes? I'll give you that. Sir.
Two thoughts. One, I would like to echo, I'm one of my neighbors. I've lived here for 38 years. I have no problem with my tax dollars going to support the legal.
I'm sorry, just can you get your name and your
Yes,
address?
I'm Tom Gift.
I'm sorry. Thanks.
I have no trouble with my tax dollars going to support the legal costs of the town in helping to bring about this moratorium. And second of all, somebody said $200 is a penalty. That gets you a basket of groceries of Wegmans these days. It seems to me if it's going to be a penalty, it needs to be a penalty.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else online? No. Nobody wants to speak. Anything else? All right, at this time, I see no more individuals opting to speak during the public hearing. I would ask if there is a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next, number 6 on the agenda, local law moratorium on short-term rentals. This is local law number 2, which of 2022, which is placing a local law on moratorium of short-term rentals for 6 months. If there were any Scribner's errors in here, I apologize, but it is what has been proposed to the board is for 6 months.
Make a motion to adopt the moratorium on short-term rentals, local law 2-2022.
Is there, oh, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, thank you. At this time,
John, can I just ask a question?
absolutely.
What happens in the 6 months of the moratorium? Will we be hearing from people of pro or con? What is our intention?
Sure. So our intention is to, first of all, the Association of Towns has an event in Canandaigua at the end of September. So I know myself and several other people associated with the town of Mendon are attending, and that is that conference is dealing specifically with this question. Also, this gives us time to look over our code, make any changes to it, get input from any citizens that have any input. If we were to change the law, it would require a public hearing, just like tonight's meeting before it was enacted or not enacted for that matter. Basically it's open season for anybody who has any questions, concerns, all the above.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Anything else any of the board members want to discuss before we call the vote?
Well, I think for me, I sat on the comprehensive plan meeting as a representative of the planning. We started that was pre-COVID, and it got strung out a little bit because of COVID. Finished up in 2021. I don't think that this is something that we talked about. We didn't have our crystal ball at that time. This is something that's relatively unforeseen, at least by me. I did not foresee this. This is something as when I think of vacation homes, rentals of where the homeowner is not there. You know, that's really something of around the Finger Lakes. You know, I did not see Mendon being a vacation destination. You know, as I go through and as there's obviously two sides to every story. And I start to make a list of why I would vote for the moratorium and why I would not vote for the moratorium. And I just wanted to make this clear. I mean, for myself, this is not about one property. This is not about one road. This is about the vision for the future of Mendon. You know, do we see the future of Mendon? This is a compatible use that we have not considered before. You know, and I also, as I list in here, why would we do this? I've added some things on here, and I say correct address ambiguity in the town zoning code. I thought that the town coding's intent in December was pretty straightforward. Now, we have two applicants that are here that have vacation homes or homes that they're looking to run out with legal representation. And there's two different interpretations, is if it's permitted or do you even have to have a permit? And that just goes to the fact that we have ambiguity that we need to take care of in our town code. Thanks for not holding me 3 minutes.
I agree with Brent. We need time to do our due diligence.
I've been able to see this, have a front row seat to a lot of this over the past year or so, being liaison to the zoning board, planning board. There is ambiguity and there's confusion. I think a 6-month timeout period would be useful. To go to the fee or the penalty, $300, you rent your place out for $5,000 for a week. It's worth doing it over and over again. All you're doing is having paid $300 for it. So I think the $2,000 has a little bit of teeth. And that is something that I know has been expressed by the zoning board, that the town needs to do something to make this enforceable. As it stands, it's tough to enforce it in any kind of meaningful way. So that's why I would be supporting the system.
Okay, anyone else? I would just like to say that, number one is, we had a situation, personally, where some family members came in from out of town for a family wedding, and we utilized both a place in Victor and I believe another place in Henrietta at various times. So there are places, and of course, as I mentioned at the very beginning, this does not affect the village of Honea Falls, which has at least one short-term rental that I'm aware of, probably more. And from my standpoint, I think that it's a good idea to take a look at this. When we changed the code back in November, December of last year, we felt like we were adjusting it properly. We thought this would close a potential loophole, and evidently some people feel that there's other questions and other ways to interpret things. But as we all know, that's why there's court and there's two attorneys and they both think they're right. And that happens every day. So I would just say that everyone's entitled to their opinion. We certainly want to hear people's opinions. And this is not a done deal on any. We're just basically, as I said earlier, calling a time out to take a look at our code, go to a seminar, and definitely hear from our residents as far as what they want, because I think that's the most important thing. We represent all of you, whether you're for or against. We represent you, and we need to hear from you how you feel. And to me, that's the most important thing. My personal opinions take back seat to what all of you think, because I represent you as an elected official. That's my opinion. I know sometimes we get further up the food chain, that's a different story. But I would say that. Is there any other comments the board would like to make at this time? And I would ask for a vote on the moratorium. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. That moratorium passes and will take effect upon the town clerk filing with the why can't I think? Department, the Secretary of the State of New York. And at this point, we'll go back to public comment. Once again, a public comment. If you were not here, you're welcome to speak about this subject, any subject that you would like. Please provide name, address, limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anyone like to speak? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.